How can this group shake up the elite mentality and its bipartisan entrenchment? Start with taking on the mix of both parties' establishment and exposing their collusion in an issue-efficient manner. First, you have to change the public lexicon on the amorphous concept called free trade. Before your eyes glaze over, remember, it is explained by Mr. Trump, bad trade deals. Let me illustrate how this simplified, to avoid eyes glazing over, concept explains the whole problem. To do that, I have to educate a man I do admire, but disagree with from time to time, Denali himself, Mark Levin. What we have now in current arrangements is not free trade, it's crony trade. Worse, it's multi-governmental controlled, regulated to the paperclip, crony trade. It is designed to favor larger businesses who already have advantageous resources by virtue of their enormity. This is not to enhance the ability of smaller companies to enter the global market. On the contrary, it serves as an instrument to hinder upstart competition. This process can only be combated on a trade-by-trade renegotiation, nation by nation, with only loose trading bloc affiliation allowed. That is real trade, because there is no such thing as free trade. The current Trans-Pacific Partnership runs 5,554 pages. In that hoarded zombie slog of meandering regulations suited to special interest pandering, 6 chapters are trade. The other 24 are the special interest answer to protectionism. There, I said it! Mr. Levin may not be in favor of TTP, but the same exclusionary provisions exist all throughout the free trade he advocates. In these multinational lock-in deals we made during the Bush and Obama years, we have 200 and 300-page regulation lists that cannot be met by even larger medium-range capital firms to promote small business. That means most American venture capital, if not invested in blue chips, goes to foreign companies. These trade deals also have built-in mechanisms that allow investment banking fraud to run amok, as was shown by J.P. Morgan under Jamie Dimon, and MF Global led right into the ground by former New Jersey governor and ex-Goldman Sachs alum John Corzine. Mind you, the Dodd-Frank law had a hand in this as well. Both men as CEOs lost $2 billion each that no one can seem to find. That's because trade deals are the new money laundering. A watering down of currencies using credit purchases like those proposed in cap and trade, funneling all world currencies into a Bitcoin-like system, centralizing the highly manipulated currency exchange rate roulette played by nations, including ours, which in turn creates root trade imbalance. In the cases of Corzine and MF Global and Dimon at JP Morgan, they used derivatives to buy into the amazingly unsuccessful EU market, purchasing debt futures and offering synthetic credit, which are both by definition derivatives. Time frame? Post-Dodd-Frank rollout and years before Brexit. Many derivatives come from components of trade deals made by crony trade brokers, i.e. Lehman Brothers. A generous amount grow up to be proprietary offerings, which can include or be fully vested hedge funds. A fiduciary corporate actor has no business owning and selling high-risk, house-brand investment packages to clients. It's literally insider trading, conflict of interest, and a pyramid scheme on a cornered market. Worst part is your corporate officers down to upper middle management at a Lehman Brothers-like outfit know when to sell before the investor, and literally have no choice but to leave their smallest clients, i.e. 401ks from Main Street, in the market to avoid the so-called legal version of insider trading. Paper trail holding companies are cropping up all over the world now, self-created golden parachutes, the financial equivalent of bug-out packs. When done in liberal banking holes like Belize, keep the SEC in the dark while fraudulent commissions finance lavish lives and future disasters. Let's add in this particular emerging market scam. If you buy an Asian tech stock assortment at 1 yen per share, then vote in your favorite free trader to the nation, knowing they will vote in TTP and its regulations which favor Asian tech items over American firms selling to the EU. So, 3 of your 5 stocks go from 1 yen per share to 3 or 5 or higher. You will have purposely conflicted interest with the well-being of your own nation and fellow Americans for some bank in your pocket. I get capitalism completely. If that's your play on an open field, have at it. But using government as your instrument of slow, selfish suicide to where your allegiance was once pledged is globalist capitalism. A resurgence in the manufacturing base of these United States is far more sustainable than the service economy NAFTA gave us. The cartels must be broken up. You have to allow an all-out playing field for small business to grow. That's real trade. If you are a true believer in free trade, that would be a single piece of paper between countries or a trading bloc with limited unilateral autonomy. The paper says free trade, except a 2% tax for customs and quality control, with a scale shift renegotiation if either nation's currency rises above or ebbs below 25% of current currency differential. That's free trade. Anything beyond is bureaucratic favor-seeking, territorial marking, or backdoor exploitation. You stifle competition when you limit the players through elaborate logistic standards and regulatory slaloms. Of great concern also is the opposite of regulation. Unilateral deregulation by third world trading partners moves American factories out of the country for logistical tariff and non-tariff value. They then sell that same product once made here back to the people of the United States, to the same workers they once fired, who now consume inferior makes at a greater profit margin to shareholders. Thus, cheaper goods equals lower standards of living for Americans, a zero-sum game. They're not helped by free trade. These provisions bring in lower quality control standards, which become the root of subsidy and create health concerns for people unhappy with the vague, unidentifiable scope of GMOs. It also eliminates much of the international market share to mom-and-pop farms, allowing big agriculture to increase its financial footprint, crushing anything smaller in its wake. It then destroys domestic agreements here and abroad as nations act like their people are just being spoiled children, and they as leaders know better. Problem is, just like those gun-grabbing Hollywood celebrities, they don't have to live inside the world they are trying to manipulate. Subsidies are a malignant growth in the trade war, but a necessary tumor that can't be removed without great pain unless the infection that created them is purged to shift the paradigm back to 100% free market healing. Subsidies are just as protectionist as tariffs. The only reason conservative intelligentsia, those Chamber of Commerce rhinos, the ones who understand the plutocracy of free trade, will rail against subsidies all day long and play it like a domestic issue. They're masking something. What they're masking is that free trade agreements require damage control, and that free trade agreements are the final arbiter in congressional decisions about subsidy line items in the budget. So they look like heroes as they turn to their across-the-aisle counterparts and share a wicked snicker with the villains at your expense. How do you get nations to do things in a non-globalist way on trade? We use what Mark Levin rightfully suggests Congress use in the budget battle: the power of the purse. The Great One, however, refuses to apply this logic on trade. It's the threat and the mini-crisis of a tariff that brings nations back to the negotiating table. This current financial climate is exactly the right time for a Donald Trump who understands real trade. Remember, there will never be free trade. It's a myth. Real trade is needed to make us a better deal with less regulation and a wider definition of who can trade and how. Do you trust the billionaires railing against him more? Sorry, Mark. It might work well for your national sponsors and their investors, big and small, who can build a plant or open an office within days of a signed treaty. To the solo save paycheck made software creation operation white male in New Jersey versus the blue chip finance Silicon Valley diversity dream team hive house, not so much. Domestically, the New Jersey guy can compete because only one member of the Silicon Valley team actually creates software worth making. The others just end up writing code or contributing graphics, which is the usual process. Getting his product to market on the world stage, while still viable, will destroy any profit margins Jersey may seek because the Silicon Valley office just created 20 new jobs at 50 cents an hour in the Caribbean basin to own a business or distribution office in a treaty-favored nation. A treaty they paid lobbyists and bribed politicians to create. Even in the case of intellectual copyright theft, Silicon Valley can manage on the decreased market share, plus pay lawyers and investigators to seek punitive damage against said thieves. Jersey boy, he's back to working for someone else, assuming he can find a job. There is nothing libertarian or conservative about that. It's just plain wrong. And sorry, Mark, on this, you're just plain wrong. Nobody is asking for a leveled playing field, just the opportunity for next-gen proven winners to compete without corrupt referees.